الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome again for our final lecture. Just on time. I would like to welcome you all for our final lecture of our 4-lecture series, which has been entitled Words of Wisdom, the advice of Luqman to his son. A father's advice, words of wisdom, the advice of Luqman to his son. And as we know, the passage we have been studying is found in Surah Luqman, verses 12 to 19, whereas in tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we will be focusing our attention on the final 2 verses of this passage, which are verses 18 and 19. Now, tonight, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I will have a guest with me today, a familiar face. Sheikh Hassan will be sharing the platform with me tonight. And we will be working together in sharing with you all some of the diseases of the heart. The last 2 verses that we will be discussing today focuses much on a very, very dangerous disease of the heart. And I will shed some light on that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Sheikh Hassan will then join me, inshallah ta'ala, and he will continue in talking about the importance of a pure heart, of a sound heart, al-qalbu salim, and he will also mention some of the antidotes or remedies in curing a sickened and hardened heart. So inshallah ta'ala, you guys get 2 for the price of 1. Walillahi alhamd. I will begin though, inshallah ta'ala, and as we have established in the past, before moving forward, we go backwards, which is a quick summary of what we discussed last week in our lecture. So the first topic that we spoke about in our lecture last week was about the greatest quality that a Muslim can possess, which is the quality of again? No? Taqwa. Did we not mention that? I believe we did. Maybe I presented it in a different way, but it was taqwa. And we spoke about the importance of instilling taqwa in ourselves and in our children. And we said that in instilling taqwa in our children, there are 2 main paths that we need to take. Number 1, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 2, the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. Similarly, as our children, they love us and they fear being disciplined from us, then in turn we should also instill these types of qualities in our children, referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order for them to have this consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we told our children that one of the greatest verses that they can remember and memorize is أَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى. That whatever we do, wherever we are, regardless of the time, regardless of the place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always sees us. And that should be a deterrent. And that should serve as a deterrent in committing any type of indecent action and sin. Then we went on to discussing the importance of prayer. We spoke about prayer. And we spoke about the difference between performing prayer and establishing prayer. And the advice of Luqman to his son was to establish prayer. Ya bunay, aqim as-salah. Oh my son, establish prayer. And then we went into 3 practical ways that a Muslim can establish their prayers. Does anybody here remember these practical ways? Go ahead.
Cleanliness or purity.
Good. So we said before, as you were mentioning, before, during, and after. So before, we focus on the word that you mentioned right here was purification. And we said that is of two types. Purification of the body, right? And really understanding what we're doing when we're performing wudu. And also purification of the heart. And that goes back to our intention, that we do what we do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we said during, and there was a word that we focused here, and that word was what? Go ahead. Ahsant. What's your name? Riyad. MashaAllah. Jazakallah khairan. Contemplation. To contemplate two things. What were these two things? Number one, what was being recited, right? What was being recited. And number two, contemplating the actions, right? Standing and bowing and prostrating. These types of things should instill iman and an increase of spirituality in our hearts. And then we went on to the final thing that we should keep in mind in terms of establishing our salah, which was after the salah. And there were two things that we did here. We said istighfar and shukr. And we used the evidence of... Where's the evidence? We always have to speak with evidence. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِكَ رَبِّكَ فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. That all the fadl, all the goodness that we do in our lives is not from ourselves, but rather it is a gift and it is a blessing from Allah. So we turn to Him in forgiveness for our shortcomings, and we thank Him for allowing us to be amongst those who are able to perform these acts of worship. Then we spoke about giving advice, the importance of giving advice, who should give advice, who should not give advice. And then we spoke about patience, and we said that patience was of how many types? Three types. The first type is patience with Allah's command. Very good. The second was patience with your nafs. Very good. And then the third was patience with the qadar. The qadar. Your qadar. The hardships. The trials. And we said that just because we pray and just because we fast, that these are not excuses. And these are not reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not test us. And we use the verse of the Quran, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. So patience is of three types. And we said the most difficult of patience is when you have the, right? When you have the choice. Right? Not when something happens and you have to be patient, but when you actually have the choice. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I practice patience, or should I give in to my nafs? So that was a quick summary of what we took last week. Walillahi alhamd. This week we will discuss the two verses 18 and 19. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these verses, He shares with us, through the advice of Luqman, وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. So we're going to stop here at this verse right here, and we're going to discuss a little bit about it. Now in this verse right here, there are a few pieces of advice, but the main advice is under the umbrella of which we will be talking about today. We're not going to be really talking about each piece of advice, but rather we're going to be talking about the main advice that Luqman is giving to his son here. Now here he's saying, do not turn your face with pride, or do not turn your face away from men, or if you're a woman, away from women, or to whoever you're talking to in pride. Now usually you see this from the prophetic methodology of dealing with people, is that the Prophet ﷺ would always look at the person in their eyes, because that is a form of respect. It is a form of respect, right? And he would always focus his attention on them, as if what that person is saying to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the most important thing, even if it wasn't. And most of the time it wasn't. Salawatullahi wa salamun alayh. But he gave that person that attention and that care. That, you know what? My attention is with you. What do you need to say to me? And he didn't turn his face out of arrogance. I'm the Prophet of Allah. You listen to me. Right? But rather, he gave that person his undivided attention. And that here is teaching us interpersonal skills. How to deal with people. Imagine going for a job interview and the person is talking to you and you're not even looking at their face and you're sitting down like this. Do you think you're going to get that job? Absolutely not. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us interpersonal skills. How to deal with people when you're talking to them. And then he says, وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. And do not walk on earth in an exalted manner. Meaning, watch your body language. Watch the way that you carry yourself. Now, you can tell a lot about a person even before they open their mouth. Just by the way they talk. Just by the way they walk. By the way they carry themselves. Their demeanor. You can tell a lot about a person. So we have to be very, very, conscious in how we present ourselves to other, not only through our verbal language, but through our body language as well. And then he goes on to say, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. That indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like those who are self-absorbed or boastful. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ. And when you come across this in the Quran, pay very close attention to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like, and in turn do the exact opposite. So here, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ, meaning every boastful person and pride person, then that means that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves every humble and modest individual, which means that's something that we should strive for. Last week we spoke about the dua that we make when we finish our wudu, didn't we? Right? We said, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم اجعلني من التوابين واجعلني من And there's another verse in the Quran, I believe, is إن الله يحب التوابين ويحب المتطهرين. So that means that we should avoid from being the opposite of these types of people, meaning not being from those who do not turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from not being amongst those who do not ritually clean themselves, but rather we're always in a state of purity. And then he goes on to say, وَاقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيِكَ وَاغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carrying on here, saying, and be moderate in the way that you walk, right? You don't want to be one of those guys, when they walk in, strutting in. No, you want to be a person who is humble, right? You want to be a person who walks with their back straight. You don't want to be another person walking like a little miskin, walking in like this. But you want to walk straight with your head up, stand tall. You're a Muslim, you're proud of who you are. That is the way a Muslim should present himself. And then he goes on to say, be moderate in your tone. Some people, they're just naturally loud, right? They're just natural. And you'll see this when you go and perform Hajj, especially amongst the Arab, right? There are some Arab, it's just their tabi'ah to be loud. You think that they're yelling at you, right? Right? They're yelling at you like, what's going on? But really he's just saying, Salamu alaikum, where's al-bayk? Right? And then there are people who are very, very, very quiet, right? When I was in studying in Malaysia, people were so quiet and so calm. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. But right here we have to have that, right? That moderation, right? Where we're not screaming at the top of our lungs, or we're not whispering, but rather we're speaking in a very clear and concise manner. And then he goes on to say, إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتٌ حَمِيرٌ. That the most detestable of sounds is the sound or the bray of the donkey, right? There's another verse in the Quran that also uses a similar analogy. Can somebody give me that verse? Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this animal as well. أحسنت. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا. And this بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. Very good. And here there's something we really should understand when it comes to the presentation and the figurative language that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in the Quran. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in an authentic hadith, لَيْسَ لَنَا مَثَلُ السُّوءِ لَيْسَ لَنَا مَثَلُ السُّوءِ. Meaning it is not befitting for a Muslim to ever be described in a negative way. Right? So here, if somebody describes you as a donkey, would that be an insult? Absolutely, it would be an insult. Right? And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing these types of individuals who perform these types of actions. Number one, speaking and yelling, right? In a very rude and in a very belligerent way, right? And somebody who's been given the truth and who doesn't act upon the truth. These are all blameworthy characteristics, right? And for the Muslim it is not befitting, because the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ لَنَا مَثَلُ السُّوءِ, that we should never be described as people who have, or we should never be described in an evil or insulting manner. So when we hear these types of figurative language, when we hear this type of analogy given in the Quran, we have to be very careful that we're not from amongst these types of people. Now here Luqman, he demonstrates a great example of tarbiyah. Now we need to understand the beauty of tarbiyah. And the only way that we can really understand the beauty of tarbiyah is if we compare it to something else that we claim to understand and we claim to believe is the solution to everything, which is education. There's a big difference between education and tarbiyah. And we see this, and you can ask any high school student, you can ask actually any university student, right? The university institutes, they are focusing on education. They are not focusing on tarbiyah. There's a very, very big difference. Now, in terms of education, what it mainly focuses on is imparting knowledge from one person to the other, or imparting information. Yani, you're in a lecture room with over 200 people. The best that can happen is that you record and that you take in what your lecturer is saying. That's the best situation, right? Realistically, right? So it's me or someone giving you, or you giving someone information. And mainly it stops at that. It doesn't go deeper than that. There's no other dimensions. But whereas tarbiyah, there is that aspect of imparting knowledge, but on top of that, there's the aspect of understanding it as well as applying it. So it's not just being informed, but it's having knowledge, being informed, understanding, and applying that knowledge in your life, or in your field, or in a situation where that knowledge needs to be applied. That's the difference between education and tarbiyah. And here, in these verses, Luqman is teaching his son tarbiyah, because he's telling him, don't do this. Isn't he saying don't do this? Right? وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ. Do not turn your face away from the people. وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. And do not walk as if you're Mr. Big Shot. But then he goes on to say what to do as well. Right? He tells him what to do. And he doesn't only tell him what he shouldn't do. He doesn't only tell him what he should do, but he also tells him why he shouldn't do it. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتَ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمْدِ. So he's teaching him about what to do, about what not to do, and why not to do it. And this is tarbiyah. This is tarbiyah. Just like you tell your kid, and we often use this example, don't put your hand on the stove, or don't play with the fire. What is your kid gonna do? You've just given him a command not to do something. kids disobey parents all the time. He's going to go and he's going to play with the fire, or he's going to put his hand on the stove. But if you tell your child, don't play with the fire, because if you play with the fire, you're going to get burned and your house is going to get burned down. Do you want that? They're obviously going to say no, because you've taught them. You didn't just order them, right? And this is a skill that we must learn in dealing with our children. Not just saying, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. But we have to take it to the next level. We have to explain. We have to make them understand. Because just because you understand, it doesn't necessitate that they understand as well. Just because you understand, don't expect your children to understand. You have to take the time and you have to take the effort to raise your children. You have to be a murabbi, as a mother and as a father and as a big brother and as a big sister. This is your responsibility. طيب, we move on. So I'll be going for about another 20 minutes, 22 minutes inshallah ta'ala. And that will bring us to the end of the first part of today's lecture. So Luqman, he shares in these 2 ayat 6 different pieces of advice. And all of these pieces of advice are connected to one main topic. Can somebody tell me what that topic is? Huh? Just say it, you know it.
Teaching to his son, preaching to his son.
Manners, good, manners. What else?
Arrogance.
Arrogance, very good. Ahsanallahu ilayk. Jazakallahu khair. Arrogance, pride, ego. Right? So this is what he's teaching. And the thing is, the beauty of this is he doesn't say iyyaka wal kibr and stop. Again, going back to the tarbiyah. Huh? Right? He says لا تكون متكبرا. He doesn't say don't be mutakabbir, but he explains what kibr is through these actions. Right? It's one thing to say don't be arrogant, but do you think your kid really understands? Or do you think the person you're talking to really understands what arrogance is if he's displaying actions of arrogance? No, you have to break it down for them. And that's exactly what Luqman did. Luqman al-Hakim. That's exactly what he did. He broke it down. He took one word and he broke it down into 6 different pieces of advice. He simplified it for the people, for his son. Now, arrogance is a very, very, very dangerous deed. Second to kibr, second to kufr. Second to kufr. And it is one of the greatest sins that lead a person to the distance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. And we said that kibr is a disease of the heart. Is this true? Is kibr a disease of the heart, or is it a disease of the mind? It's a disease of the heart, because the Prophet ﷺ says in an authentic hadith narrated by Muslim on the narration of Abdullah bin Mas'ud, where he says لا يدخل الجنة, meaning this person will not enter into Jannah, right? Man kana fi qalbihi, or he will stay in Jahannam for a very long time, or for some time he will be punished. لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه what? مثقال ذرة من كبر, meaning an atom's weight of kibr in his heart. And then the companions around them, they said, Ya Rasulullah, one of them, he stood up, come here for a second, stand up Ali, come here. Look at Ali for example, mashallah. He said, he's like Ali, right? Both Ali today, they look real fresh, mashallah. He said, but Ya Rasulullah, I like to look good, right? I like to look good. Even one of the narrations says, I like to wear a nice white thobe. And I like to wear nice shoes. You would see his shoes, but mashallah, he's respecting the masjid, so he's not wearing his shoes. Mashallah. So is Ali being mutakabbir? No. The Prophet said, no, don't get it twisted. Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. And then he goes on to explain what kibr actually is. Huh? Batar al-haq wa ghamt al-nas. That it is to reject or to belittle the truth, and to belittle or disrespect the people. Do we understand what kibr is now? Two things. Number one, to reject the truth. And number two, to belittle the people. Now, Islam is a religion that focuses on prevention before it focuses on the cure. Again, Islam is a religion that focuses on prevention before it focuses on the cure. Now here, we know the disease is kibr. And we said that kibr is what? Rejecting the truth and belittling the people. But here we're not going to focus on the disease and its cure. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on ways that we can prevent ourselves from even reaching this disease. Do we understand this? We're going to focus on the prevention, and inshallah ta'ala, Sheikh Hassan will focus on the cure. Focus on the cure. Tayyib. And there's three things that I want to share with you today because of the time. But there's three things that I hope inshallah ta'ala that will resonate with many of you here tonight, bi'idhnillah. The number one way to prevent ourselves from becoming arrogant, right? Not to cure ourselves, but to prevent ourselves, is to refrain from perceiving ourselves to be something that we are not. Try and refrain ourselves in perceiving that we are something that we are not. What does that mean? It means that as we grow and we become older, we become different. You know, we acquire different responsibilities. We become stronger, both mentally, physically, right? We become successful in our choice of career. A student today will not view himself the same way he views himself as a graduate of his bachelor's degree or of his master's degree or of his PhD. So as we grow and we become more seasoned and we earn these titles and these names, at times we will view ourselves in a higher manner, and then we expect people to view us in the same way. Right? And this is not right. It's not correct. And it is not the way of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Imam al-Qurtubi, he says something very beautiful. He makes a great observation. What is that observation? He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He teaches the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam indirectly how to be humble and not use his God-given title. Now, God-given title, not human-given title like you and I, but God-given title to be arrogant or to increase his ego. Allah teaches Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the Quran indirectly how to be humble and not use his God-given title and status to be arrogant or to increase and make his ego big. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what are the last verses of Surah Al-Kahf? What is he ordering the Prophet ﷺ to say? قُلْ لِمَنْ لِمُحَمَّدٍ قُلْ يَا مُحَمَّدٍ إِنَّمَا أَنَا what? بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. I am nothing but I am like you. يُوحَى إِلَيَّ. Meaning the only difference between you and me is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the Quran to me. إِنَّمَا أَنَا خَيْرُ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ إِنَّمَا أَنَا خَاتَمَ النَّبِيِّينَ. No, إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ. And on top of that, مِثْلُكُمْ. Like you. You are like me and I am like you. What else does he say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the first verse, subhanallah, Surah Al-Kahf, and I just picking this up right now, Surah Al-Kahf is in between the humbleness of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. What does the first verse say in Surah Al-Kahf? Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala ala abdihi. Servant. The most humbling of titles. I'm a servant. I'm a slave. It is between, subhanallah, the knowledge and the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the rule of thumb here is, do not let your worldly rank decrease your rank in the akhirah. Regardless of what you reach in this dunya, that is great. Alhamdulillah, Muslims should strive to reach the highest of statuses in the dunya. But never let that status compromise your humility and you being humble. And always remember, if Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is khayru khalqillah, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is khatam al-nabiyyin, then regardless of what title you reach in your life, you will always be a abd. You will always be a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, another means that will help prevent us from belittling people and rejecting the truth, which is arrogance, is having people overpraise you. Now, one of the greatest ways to become arrogant or to inflate your ego is to have people praise you. I see it on the basketball court all the time. I'm a pretty good basketball player, alhamdulillah. Those guys right there, about 10 of them right there, they'll testify to that fact. None of them have been able to beat me on the basketball court, alhamdulillah. Right? He's coming tomorrow. He says like this, Safarjik. This is what he says. But it's true. But overpraising somebody will ultimately lead that person to what? Thinking highly of himself. And that is the door of kibr. Once you open that door, you've entered. MashaAllah. Tafaddal. That's what they're saying. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said in authentic hadith, what did he say? Throw dust in the face of the person who praises you extravagantly. And literally the scholars are teeter-tottering here in the understanding of this hadith. Some have taken the literal understanding and some have taken the figurative understanding. The ones who have taken the literal understanding throw dust in the face of the people who overpraise you, meaning if you're in a position of power, or you're a father or you're a mother or you're a teacher and you're speaking to the person, or the person who's praising you is a friend of yours or someone who you love, then take the dust or take dust and literally as a form of reminder and as a form of them to stop talking, as they say, throw that dust at them. Right? Literally, this is how some of the scholars interpreted this hadith. And the other scholars have said, what you do in this situation is you smile and you turn around, you say Jazakumullahu khairan, and you think nothing of it. Because thinking highly of what the people think about you is the worst thing that you could do. If I take somebody's praise today, what does that mean? It means that I've validated them and I've validated their opinion. And just as they praise me today, they will also insult me tomorrow. Right? They will insult. And if I validated their praise yesterday, then ultimately I will validate their insult today. This is why when somebody comes to praise you, take it for face value. Don't let it penetrate your heart. What did the Prophet ﷺ teach us? He said, when somebody comes up to you and tries to praise you, go back to Allah. Allahumma la tu'akhidhni bima yaqulun waghfir li ma la ya'lamun waj'alni khayran mimma yadhunnun. Oh Allah, do not take me to account for what they say, and forgive me, for they know not really of who I am, and make me better than what they think I am. Imam Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah, He used to say, I would never leave a gathering until I felt in my heart that I was the worst person sitting in that gathering. So he would look at every single person here today, and he would find not a fault in them, but a fault in himself. And then he would say, I will leave now. Right? So we as Muslims, we seek for the praise of Allah. We seek for the praise of the angels. But the praise of the people is only temporary. And we as Muslims, we seek that which is everlasting. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praise us in the highest of heavens. Last but not least, another means in order for us to prevent ourselves from falling into kibr. And we said kibr is what? Two things. What is it? Rejecting the truth and belittling the people. Ahsantum. So one of the last ways is disregard our ethnicity and our race. One of the saddest realities is that there are people actually, and these are Muslims, there are people who actually believe in their right mind that they are better than somebody else because of their race and ethnicity. There are people like this. It's not far-fetched that they believe that they are better than you, and they believe that they are better than me because of the color of their skin, or because of the language that they speak, or because of the little tiny village with no electricity and water that they were born in. They think that they're better than you. They think that they're better than me. They think that they're better than everybody. They're racist. It is a satanic belief. Iblis was the first racist. Iblis was the first racist. قال Allah ما منعك ألا تسجد إذ أمرتك. Here comes the most racist statement. قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. You created me and you created him black. I'm white, he's black. He's black, I'm white. I come from here, he comes from there. That is the statement of Iblis. And Iblis was exiled out of Jannah because of this. لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال ذرة من كبر. This is Allah showing us this statement. Right here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل. ليش؟ لتعارفوا. For you to get to know one another. Allah created you and made you into different people, different tribes, different colors, different races. What, so you can stand here and say, I'm better than you and you're better than me? And I come from here and you come from there? And I'm black and you're white? لِتَعَارَفُوا. To get to know one another. To build ties, to build bridges, to love one another. And if for a second you want to be better than somebody else, don't look at the color of their skin, don't look at their car, don't look at their house, don't look at this or that. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. If you really want to be better than somebody, you want to be proud, humble yourself. Because just as the Prophet ﷺ said that kibr is in the heart, he also said at-taqwa ha-huna. And he pointed to his heart and he said it twice. At-taqwa ha-huna, at-taqwa ha-huna. So it's either kibr or it's taqwa that is in our hearts. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to be amongst those who have a heart full of taqwa. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eradicates this racism and this arrogance and this entitlement from the Muslim community. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to be humble. When you are humble, you are raised. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, the closest that a servant is to Allah is when? When he's on the minbar? No. When he's in sujood. When he humbles himself. And he takes his face, right? Regardless of what color it is. And he prostrates. And he humbles himself to the Lord of mankind, Allahu subhanahu wa ta'ala. That being said, we have come to the end of our lecture series. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts even just a second from our attendance here in the past 4 weeks. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to be amongst those who can learn from the advice of Luqman to his son, allows us to be amongst those who teach it to our children, and our children teach it to their children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our shortcomings. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا.